So just wanted to do a little recap of what we covered so far. So we are on second chapter, and today is the third part, the third segment of the second chapter. So we talked about the soul in a lot of detail, and like we were mentioning yesterday, the Bhagavad-Gita is sort of spiral. So we'll keep coming back to these topics. So there are many more topics within the discussion of soul that we'll be addressing as we go along in these chapters. But we covered what is soul, what is consciousness, what is reincarnation. We talked about how the soul is actually unique, right? It's an individual, and it never comes into existence, and it never dies, right? So that was kind of where we stopped yesterday.
The soul is amazing. That's another thing we can appreciate about every soul, because it is a part of the spiritual spark of Krishna. So because Krishna is most amazing, so therefore every soul is very amazing. And our existence here is also very amazing. How the soul works, how the soul makes this body alive. All of this is really, really amazing. And one can meditate on this qualities of the soul. And that way one can become actually free from getting entangled in this material world.
We also talked about how the soul is never actually affected by any of the five elements. That fire cannot burn it and water cannot wet it, right? So we talked about how what that means is that the soul is actually non-material and has absolutely nothing to do with the world of matter. And then we talked about then what is the soul doing here, right? So then we discussed how it's sort of like a projection on a movie screen, and we have somehow become so involved in that projection that we think that is real. And so our involvement with matter is actually very artificial, just like oil and water. There's no real connection. In fact, the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna describes how matter is an inferior energy. So, and yet we are here because of our desire to enjoy matter.
So we'll jump into today's presentation. Let me share the screen. So we are starting with text 31. Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. So until now Krishna was talking about the soul trying to convince Arjuna from the point of view of knowledge, of difference between body and soul, and his duty stemming from his knowledge of the soul. Now, in order to convince Arjuna from another way, so Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, he's going to present arguments from different points of view, and some of those arguments may be inferior, some of those arguments may be superior, but he's trying to present from every angle so Arjuna could be convinced. And also is Krishna's liberal mindedness, that he wants Arjuna to consider all points of view. So this is the point of view where he's emphasizing Arjuna's duty, material duty as a Kshatriya, which means a king or a ruler whose main duty is to protect his citizens and his kingdom. And so from that point of view, he's trying to convince Arjuna in the next 8 verses.
O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas. So Kshatriyas means warriors, to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets.
So Arjuna was concerned about going to hell because of killing so many people and the sinful reactions. But Krishna is telling him that as a Kshatriya, these fighting opportunities, especially these dharma, these fights which are based on dharma, they come very rarely. So they open the doors to heaven. Please mute yourself, all of you.
If, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter.
So it's the reverse actually, because Arjuna was concerned about sins, but Krishna is saying that if you abandon your duty for fighting, then you will incur sins rather than by not fighting.
People will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death.
So this is the second argument Krishna gives, that not only you will incur sins, but you will also incur infamy, which is actually for a Kshatriya, that is the greatest calamity. It's worse than death.
It is described in the Kshatriya code that if it is better for them to die facing the enemy rather than turn your back and run away. That is considered to be the greatest act of cowardice. Yeah. So the great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant.
So he's telling Arjuna that don't think that the great warriors like Duryodhana and Karna, his opponents, they will think kindly of you. They will actually think of you as a coward, and they will not consider your compassion as worthy.
Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? O son of Kunti, either you'll be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight.
So here is finally giving him the let's read one more verse.
Now he changes his gear again here.
Yeah, do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. So till text 37, he's telling him that by fighting you will actually be the winner. It's a win-win situation for you. And now he's bringing him to a higher understanding, which is that fighting in the spirit of detachment.
Because so far he's giving him a sort of like a material motivation. He's saying, oh, if you fight, you will get this. Now he's saying, well, actually, you should fight without consideration of these motivations. So you can see how Krishna is bringing him one step on a higher plane. So he's saying, do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin.
And now he's going to present a new philosophy or new yoga system, which is the Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. He says, thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study, which is, Krishna spoke about the nature of the soul, how it's different from the body. That is called analytical study, or Sankhya, which means analytical study of this material world. And Krishna also analyzed his duty as a Kshatriya and what will happen if he doesn't fight. So that's kind of analytical study. Now, going forward, Krishna is going to describe how one should act in this consciousness of yoga, or Buddhi Yoga, or Karma Yoga. So that is being described now going forward. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works.
Because that was his concern, right? Was the karma that he would accrue. So this is a very famous verse again. It says...
Maybe we can see the verse. Nihabhikramanasho asti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat.
In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So this is a very encouraging verse where we see that, just even a little bit of progress that we make on the path of spiritual life is actually is eternal. Just like the soul is eternal, so the progress made on this path of realizing the soul is also eternal.
And typically when you start a material endeavor, then if you do not complete it, then all the effort is wasted and you have to start all over again, and it does not carry over to the next life. But any progress made, or even a tiny bit of effort made on the spiritual path carries, the advancement is preserved, and the person starts at the same level where they left off whenever they start again. And not only that, it also protects one from the most dangerous type of fear, which is falling back into the material sphere. So therefore Krishna is kind of advertising that this path is kind of foolproof. You don't have to completely depend on your own willpower to make progress. Your advancement is always preserved.
It's a very encouraging verse. In fact, there's another verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam which says that even if you run on this road with your eyes closed, still one will not trip and fall. So the idea being that you won't go wrong with this, basically.
Because in all the other yoga systems, if you fall down, then you start from scratch again.
So those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one, O beloved child of the Kurus. The intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. So this is again a really famous verse, and it shows this one-pointed resolution. And if one is a divided soul, which means many other desires, and one is distracted, and one doesn't really know, and we're going to talk more about this, that why am I doing what I'm doing, and for whom am I working? Then what happens is that there are so many other things that attract our attention, and then we find ourselves being pulled in many different directions.
Yeah, if you don't know the why, then the other things will distract us.
Okay. You keep going. Yeah. Okay.
Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this.
Actually, I was just thinking that right before this, he's saying that the intelligence of those, it's who are irresolute is many branched. So the reason for their irresoluteness is because they're so much attached or attracted by the flowery words of the Vedas. So it's interesting that even though the Vedas have actually emanated from Krishna himself, but here he's actually he's not very impressed, right, with the bulk of the Vedas.
Because the Vedas mainly deal with these ritualistic, religious kind of activities for material gain, and it's kind of a hook to get people into the Vedas, but ultimately it's not the most beneficial thing. So here Krishna is telling Arjuna, because Arjuna was giving arguments earlier based on the Vedas, that people, the rituals of the Vedas will be lost and the traditions will be lost. So Krishna is saying that you should raise your consciousness and thinking beyond the words of the Vedas, and think what is higher than and really get to the real purpose of the Vedas.
In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So again, same point, that when one is too much attracted by what's in it for me, how can I enjoy, maybe if I do this I'll get this in return, a transactional form of spirituality
that puts off people,
that puts off, pretty much all of us, we've been at one point or the other being put off by that. And so Krishna is actually rejecting that and saying that actually that's never going to make you happy, and you will also not be able to develop the determination if you have that mindset.
Yeah, that's like the religion business in the name of religion, or trying to take advantage of people. So that's all called cheating religion, and Krishna is saying that reject that cheating religion and try to accept the real essence of spirituality.
The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes, be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self.
All purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So again, Krishna is imploring Arjuna to go to the real why, or the real purpose, which is to understand and establish a loving relationship with Krishna. And these other small wells are like the rituals of the Vedas, and their purpose can be actually served very quickly by the spiritual practice of connecting with Krishna.
And this is a fact actually, that most of the times when people all over the world, when they fight over differences, they're essentially fighting over these external rituals and external things, right? And then you see that it's all different. But actually a true practitioner of bhakti or any path of spirituality is an essence seeker. So he accepts the real essence or the real purpose behind those activities. This is a very famous verse. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty.
We can say the verse. Karmani evadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalahetur bhur mate sangosta karmani.
You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty.
Perform your duty. So here now, starting text 48, Krishna is going to present the yoga of work, or the art of work. Just doing our duty is not enough, because when people read this verse 47, they think that if I just do my duty in this world, then I'm good enough. But in what consciousness the work should be done, Just the fact that we do anything doesn't make it a worship. So how to turn work into worship is being described here by Krishna.
Perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga.
O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, Buddhi Yoga, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers.
A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. Yoga karmashu kaushalam. It's very beautiful.
By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in this material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries. Padam Gachanti. So here again, he's describing the benefit of acting in this consciousness, that one can not only achieve the best in this world, but also become free from the cycle of birth and death.
And then he said, gives you the benefit of doing that, right? That when your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is
heard.
That is to be heard.
When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So here is introducing this divine consciousness, which will be discussed in the next verses.
Next section.
So this ends our section, reading for this section. So today we are discussing 31 through 54, and the acronym for that is two dharmas, or conflict between two duties.
So the word dharma is again quite a common word, and sometimes we have doubts about what that word really means. So dharma essentially means, it can mean a duty, and in a deeper sense it means the essential nature, right? That which dharma, literally the word dharma means that which holds things together, which
it comes from this Sanskrit root drit, which means to hold. So something that gives sustenance to something, or the essential nature of something, and out of that then comes the duty to maintain that dharma.
So in order for us to maintain our body or to hold the body together, there are some duties, right? So that is one kind of dharma. But then there is another dharma, which is the eternal nature of that spirit soul, right? Which is our real identity. So there are activities connected to that as well. So the duty or the activities connected to that, and also to get to that is another kind of dharma, and that would be called spiritual dharma.
And so this is just a broad definition of two categories, but dharma is again subdivided into many categories depending on what our situation in society is, what our ashram or varna is. So dharmas get
ashram means what kind of which stage of life we are in, or what our occupational duty is. So for example, if a person is a warrior, then he would have a warrior dharma. A householder would have householder dharma, right? A student would have student dharma, and so on and so forth.
So in this section we'll see that Arjuna is having a conflict. Krishna is introducing this dharma of Kshatriya, or according to our bodily nature, and then he is taking Arjuna to the next level of dharma, which is pertaining to his soul. And it seems like these two dharmas have a conflict, because sometimes people feel that if I am doing my material duty, then I cannot do my spiritual duties, and vice versa, that in order to be spiritual I have to kind of give up my work, or if I am working, then I can't be spiritual. So this is just like a diagram showing how this section is divided quickly. First, Krishna addresses Arjuna's desire for enjoyment. He says that you will go to heaven if you fight, even if you win or die. And then he combines the concept of knowledge and working in detachment. So that way you can combine both this our knowledge about the soul, that we are a spiritual being, and then we have some material responsibilities. So both of them can be combined in this concept of Buddhi Yoga.
And then, the next section is on how spiritual but not religious, which many people feel nowadays, that, I'm spiritual but I'm not religious. And Krishna is actually saying, in his own words, he's saying exactly the same thing, right? And then finally we end with the art of work. So this is actually quite an interesting TED talk by this guy called Simon Sinek, and he's I was just looking up that, this is like one of the top 3 TED Talks in the world. And so many people have watched it. So we'll just watch it very briefly. And
it brings out the point of finding the why, like why we are doing something. And until we find the why connected to our real self, we'll be distracted in so many different directions. And our activities in this world will not be the most effective or fruitful.
Regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple.
So Krishna is actually doing something very similar here, right? That Arjuna is kind of caught up in,
the how and the what.
Yeah, in the how and the what. He's saying, what's in it for me? What about this? And
how about the sinful reactions? How about this and how about that? But he's not really addressing the why.
And so Krishna is kind of bringing him. Krishna is bringing him to this place of really figuring out what is our deepest motivation for work, and rather what should be the deepest motivation of our work. Right? So
we're also
most of the times our motivation for work always tends to be profit, right?
So there are 2 motivations of work Krishna introduces in this section. One is a religious motivation, which is Arjuna is displaying. He's not completely selfish, but he has a religious conception of why he should not fight. And Krishna introduces this another motivation, which is spiritual motivation of work. So what happens when we are running after this, just the religious motivation?
So the motivation is that what's in it for me? Now that could be religious or non-religious, but the point is that in this case Krishna is giving him a material lure, a religious lure, that if you do this activity you will attain the heavens and you will get to enjoy, right? Life in the heavenly realm. This is a story of Leo Tolstoy where it talks about how there was this man who was very, very greedy, and he was given this opportunity that he could run all night long, and he had to come back to that same starting point before dawn. As far as he could run
during the day,
he could get as much land as he could cover, running. But then, the thing was that by dusk he had to come back to the starting point.
Right. And if he couldn't, then he will lose all the land, basically.
Yeah. So he started to run, and he thought, this is a great deal. I can just keep running, and then I cover all the land, and all that land becomes mine. But then what happened is that as he kept running, he kept thinking, a little bit more, maybe a little bit more. And so he kept running, and he ran so far away that by the time he realized that he had to come back to the starting point, it was too late. But he tried very hard to rush back, but then in exhaustion, he falls down and he finally dies. And then they finally bury him in 6 feet of land. And so the point being, how much land does a man really need? So because his motivation was personal profit and his own greed of how much he could accumulate for himself, so in the end he found himself exhausted.
Yeah, in the Vedas this concept is called dharma, artha, kama, moksha, which is one engages in religious activities or dharma for material desires, and therefore that is decried by Krishna, that that's not really going to give you get you anywhere. Basically, you'll run around in circles and get exhausted. So Krishna is trying to elevate him to the second motivation, the real motivation.
So, but the interesting thing is that knowledge is still given by Krishna himself for those people who are interested in that. But then he's saying, okay, this is there, but don't get tempted into this.
And the other effect of just being motivated by religious rituals or doing things without knowing the why is that one can lose faith, or one can stop doing it if somebody else takes care of your needs. So if somebody follows religion just for their needs, then this is what happened in Russia. People, when they would go to the church and they come out, then they would the Communist Party, they would stand with truckloads of bread and say, did your God give you bread? And no, so then everybody would get bread from this. So why do you have to worship God? You just take the bread from us and become a communist.
So we see that, again, not knowing the why, right? Just religion for the sake of religiosity. So this is a quote from the Bhagavad-Gita 247, the verse where we have just finished. We just read this. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty.
So here Krishna first he introduces this religious motivation of doing duty, which is Kshatriya nature, and then now Krishna is introducing the next level of motivation, which is working without any attachment, or a detached concept of working.
And it's interesting that somebody could say, well, if there is nothing in it for me, then why should I work? And so Krishna is saying, but also don't be not attached to not doing your duty. So which means that you still have to work, but you are not entitled to the fruits. So this is actually a very interesting. There is a Hungarian psychology professor, Mihaly. There is no way I can pronounce his last name. But anyways, he came up with this idea of flow theory, which is really interesting because this is very similar to what Krishna is saying. He's saying, do your work, but don't be attached to the fruits. Now, somebody would say, what's in it for me, right? How does that even happen? But apparently, this professor talks about this idea that when you can actually work in that consciousness of not being attached to the consequences of your work, without expecting a certain outcome from your work, then you are freed from the pressure, and one can actually enter into the zone which they call the flow zone, where apparently one can be the most creative and most productive, and one can actually tap into the deepest part of our creativity. And so it's very interesting that what Krishna is saying applies on a spiritual plane, but it also applies in being able to tap into our creativity and our
and that's what Krishna tells, that don't be worried about victory or defeat, heaven or hell, and you should just fight for the sake of fighting.
I think there's a little part of it that you wanted to share.
Not the whole thing, so let me see. I think it goes.
Tune out the crowd and the noise that's engineered. It's a strange paradox where time seems to stand still, and yet it seems to be over in an instant. It feels effortless even though you're facing an extreme challenge. There's a sense of relaxation, but it's also intense. You seem more present than ever, but you also seem to lose your entire sense of self. You've probably experienced this before, when you were so engaged in a task that you lost track of time and place. There is a term for this. It's called being in a state of flow. And if we want students to be fully...
So this is actually, this happens when one can engage in work from a place of being totally detached, right? Not attached to the fruits. But then again, that is still not the stage of perfection, because even though one can say that I'm completely detached, and this story kind of illustrates that. Say there's a wallet that has fallen on the ground, then there could be three responses. At least three responses. So the first would be somebody comes and looks at it and says, oh wow, a wallet full of money, let me get this, let me take this for myself. So that would be sort of the first.
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me?
So he takes the wallet. The second one is he's detached, so he doesn't care about the wallet because it's not his. He's detached from this world, and that's the detached response, that I don't care.
So he just kind of walks around this wallet and he says, it doesn't belong to me, I don't care, I'm out of here, right? So he just walks away from it.
And that's the situation with this detached work. There will be fruits to our work, but then what do we do with the fruits?
So the third one is where a third guy comes and he takes a look at that wallet and he goes, this wallet must belong to someone. And then he opens the wallet, looks at maybe if there's an address or something, and then tries to find the person to whom that wallet actually belongs and returns it to the rightful owner.
And that's the highest course of action Krishna is proposing by Buddhi Yoga, that they unite the wallet with the owner. Similarly, unite the results of our work or our consciousness with the rightful owner, which is the Supreme.
So this is a nice section that kind of gives us a nice segue.
What is the real why? So what's the purpose of our doing anything? Until we find that.
And I would say that the best way to begin to figure out who you are really meant to be is to ask the universe, God, that question. God, how can I be used in service to myself first, and how can I then use that service to serve the world? Use your life to serve the world, and you will find that it also serves you. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that they have to get paid a lot of money or even get paid at all for their calling. You are here to...
I think that is good.
Yeah.
So this is actually what Krishna is also telling Arjuna.
But find your calling and then
Do it as a
service to me.
service to me, because just doing it detached, like for example, if I have a tree, now there are fruits in that tree. What am I going to do with those fruits? I cannot just walk away from those fruits, right? I cannot just be like a detached onlooker and say, I'm not going to touch these fruits because, hey, these fruits don't belong to me. So we have to find a proper utilization of those fruits, because every work comes with some fruits.
honor your calling.
And so here then Krishna is introducing this concept of what is the right consciousness to work, this yoga of work. He says, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions even in this life. Therefore strive for yoga, which is the art of all work.
So doing our work in a way that the work is done in a consciousness of service, and the fruits that come about from that work is then offered to the Supreme Person, because he's the root of everything. So when he is satisfied, the entire universe is satisfied, and that is the art of all work. That's a yoga. So
that's the conclusion of this section, how to work, the yoga of work. It has three main principles, which is the law of dharma: act according to the law of dharma, act according to the law of detachment, and act with law of service. So acting with law of dharma is that we act according to what is right for our situation in life, what is whatever position we are in, and of course not doing abominable activities in our work. And
I was also thinking that, this is a very critical thing, because as soon as people start looking at spiritual life, they think, oh, maybe I need to change something in my material life. But actually dharma means that wherever we are, whatever work that we are doing, just using that work as an act of connection, right? So that's dharma, working according to our nature and finding a deeper why or a purpose behind that work.
Yeah, and then doing it with a sense of detachment, and most importantly doing it as a service to the Supreme, and a service to others. This mode of giving and service in our work really makes it very purposeful and very fulfilling.
Very nice question, Delia. We're going to discuss that once we're done with that.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So the next section, which is sort of like the overarching theme of this whole section. So it seems like there are these two threads. One is this thread of work and how to work, in what consciousness to work or not to work. And then the other theme, which is very, very strong, and Krishna speaks very strongly in this section, is this whole discussion of what is spiritual and what is religious, right? That how, and it's interesting that, they say that more and more people in America, and I'm sure all over the world, are now identifying themselves as being spiritual, but not so interested in being, like sort of classified as religious.
Yeah, and then being religious has many meanings, but I guess primarily rituals and activities which which are coming as tradition,
Kind of feels empty.
empty.
Or
Yeah.
also like a little, it almost feels dogmatic,
Right, not understanding,
not understanding. Same thing for us,
or
right?
doing out of fear, doing out of pressure, doing out of sense of prestige or whatever.
Yeah, it feels superficial. So Krishna is actually indicating exactly the same thing. He's saying that you don't have to, Arjuna, engage in just religious formularies, right? Which means that religion for the sake of either fear, prestige, or for some material gain. I do this and I get this in return. What's in it for me? It's very transactional. And there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam which describes that there is only one thing that can actually completely satisfy the self. And that is, unmotivated and uninterrupted service to the Supreme Lord. And so Krishna's, sort of urging Arjuna that, get past all of this, this big jungle.
Like a big forest of illusion.
Yeah.
And this Prabhupada describes the spiritual consciousness. What is the spiritual consciousness?
So religion, the so-called religion, is a sentiment. Today you're Hindu, tomorrow you become Muslim, or today you're Muslim, tomorrow you become Christian. That kind of conversion, change, is not religion, because the man remains the same. Simply by his changing the rubber stamp, I'm Hindu, I'm Muslim, I'm Christian, that does not make any benefit. Therefore, our movement is Krishna consciousness. We don't talk of any religion. The consciousness should be changed. The material consciousness should be changed into spiritual consciousness. That is our propaganda. It is meant for Hindu, Muslim, Christian, anyone, white, black, yellow, everything, because it is the function of the soul. Soul is not black, white, yellow. Soul is spirit. So one has to realize that I am spirit soul. I am not Indian, nor American, nor Englishman, nor German, nor white, nor black. This is my bodily description. I am not this body. This is the beginning of spiritual understanding. Bhagavatam 1.2.6.
So being spiritual means one who knows how to find the essence of things, real essence of things. Just like the swan, it is described as the quality of like separating milk from water. So it really takes out the essence. So that's what really means being spiritual. Is even though we may be doing the activities, so it doesn't mean that a spiritual person doesn't do the religious activities. It means that they do those activities with the real understanding and with the real purpose, and not just doing them blindly or out of any kind of fear or pressure or motivation to gain something.
So finding the real why,
Yeah.
right? Finding the essence. We are meant to be essence seekers. Saragrahi, the word is, it means that taking out the essence, just like a swan, allows us to really work with a very, with the right motivation and with the understanding of why we are doing. And once we know the why of anything, then we can actually endure the how, right? That's Viktor Frankl. He says that if you know the why, you can endure any how. So, and this is what Krishna is urging Arjuna to sort of go past his own material motivation, his religious motivation, his social motivation, political motivation, and find the deepest spiritual motivation from which one can, and it says that when you work in that consciousness, then one is never in any way affected by
All the other motivations, they are in conflict with each other. But when one works with this spiritual motivation, then all those other areas, they are automatically taken care of and they get satisfied.
So that's the end of this section here.
Yeah.
So we'll just
Address this.
address these questions, and please, if you guys can also keep sharing your reflections in the chat box while we do that. So let's see, where do we start? How do I apply this to mundane tasks like washing the dishes?
Yeah, I mean, all our duties, they are done with this remembrance of the Supreme, and that we are doing it for His pleasure. So even washing our, like brushing our teeth and whatever we do, I mean, going to work and taking care of family and cooking our food and going for shopping, everything can be done in that consciousness that, my existence has a higher purpose, and I'm doing these things for making advancement. So everything then get connected to our ultimate goal. And so there is no difference then between our day-to-day activities and our spiritual life, because typically then if we don't think like that, or we don't act in that consciousness, then we always, okay, this is my material life, this is my spiritual life. But for a true spiritualist, there is no separation between matter and spirit.
We like to put things in a box,
Yeah.
right? Divide things neatly and say this is matter, this is spirit. But actually, when one has a spiritual conception, then even mundane, there is no longer any mundane task. Every task that we do, because it is done, just like when you go for a work, like when you're going out for your job in the morning, then you take a bath. But when you're taking a bath so that you can get dressed and you can go to work. When you're driving to work. So everything gets connected to that work that you're about to begin. So,
and just like the mother, mother is a classic example. Mother has a small baby, young baby, and the mother takes care of the baby and gets tired, but the mother is taking rest while thinking of the baby. It's taking rest thinking that okay, tomorrow morning I will be fresh to take care of the baby. While she's washing the dishes, she's thinking of the baby. She's always conscious of the baby. Even the baby makes a little squeaky noise, then the mother hears from 2 miles away and runs to the baby. So she's always conscious. So similarly, we can always be conscious of Krishna while doing anything that we are doing.
and that's actually the difference between Arjuna and Duryodhana. They're both on the same battlefield, but they're experiencing completely different results. Okay, yes, Naji, we'll get to that. Let's come from the top. I think when you're present, truly present, you enjoy whatever you are doing, then it becomes a pleasure and is in service. Eric, does everyone have a prescribed duty? How do we determine what our prescribed duty is? Is serving in the military an acceptable prescribed duty?
Yeah, in today's day and age, I guess prescribed duty, we have a spiritual prescribed duty, which is to connect ourselves, and then based on our bodily situation, material situation, we do what we can do to earn our livelihood, but that is only meant to keep our body and soul together, or maintain ourselves, but then using our energy primarily for our spiritual advancement. So if somebody has to go in the military and they don't have a choice in this Kali Yuga, what can you do? But then while you are in the military, one can also engage in such a way that one is still we have many devotees.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard, yeah.
She was in the military, right? And she has used her position to cultivate her own spiritual consciousness and help others. So one can. I mean, there is no bar. There is no bar to what one can do as a spiritualist. Of course, abominable activities, are out. But in Kali Yuga, the age that we live in, we don't really have a proper system of prescribed duties. That was a system that was prevalent in previous ages, where people could actually work according to their nature. But but right now, for most of us, being able to find a job according to our nature is practically very, very difficult. So that's why in Kali Yuga, the focus is more on our spiritual duty and doing whatever we need to do to keep our material side of life intact. So I hope that helps, Eric.
Leah, your question is unmotivated and uninterrupted service a consequence of our practice? It seems hard to attain just by trying to do it. Yeah, it is, but the fact that we are trying and will fail, but we keep on trying, and this is what devotional service is. It's not going to happen in one day, but we have the goal in front of us, and Krishna accepts our failures. He accepts our struggle through it, as long as we are trying towards it. That is pleasing to Krishna.
And it comes about, like, as soon as we take up the spiritual practices, we're actually walking on this path of unmotivated and uninterrupted service. An example that is given is like a mango is always a mango. It may be green, but it's still a mango, right? Now, over a period of time, if you give it time, then that green mango will become ripened. So right from the very beginning, bhakti is always bhakti. Now, it may not be pure bhakti, but it is still bhakti. So one can just go on, and by that practice, then one will be able to remove all these superfluous motivations and come to a place of pure motivation. Sanskrit word for sound
is dhvani.
Dhvani or nada.
Yeah, that's not very commonly used. But yeah.
Okay. Naji, I'm having trouble understanding Bhaktivedanta Swami's purport on religion versus Krishna consciousness. Isn't Krishna consciousness a religion?
Yeah, typically, I mean, religion, the word religion is meant to indicate the kind of religious framework we have, like Hindu, Muslim, these religions. But in Sanskrit, there is nothing called religion. It's called dharma. and it indicates not a particular kind of bodily dharma, but it is the nature of the soul and heart. So Krishna consciousness is the nature of the soul, activity of the soul, whereas religion typically means bodily based faith, and that changes, and Krishna consciousness does not change.
So just I hope that helps, Naji. Like,
Yes,
Prabhupada
yes,
was
it
actually very, very. Yeah, it does. Okay. What are the qualities that differentiate between a religious person and a spiritual person? Very nice question. So a religious person tends to follow rituals and practices with some personal motivation, right? Without really understanding the real purpose behind those motivation, behind those rituals. So that's one part. And then the second part is that it's transactional in nature. So which means that I do something and I expect some result. So I'll perform this ritual and so that I can get something in return. The meaning of a spiritual person or spirituality starts with the understanding that I am not this body, that I actually have nothing to do with this world of matter. So religion still deals with this material dimension, right? So people still think in terms of like, if I dig a well, I'll get some good karma. Maybe if I do this, I'll attain the heavenly planets, the paradise is waiting for me. All of that stuff, it deals with this world of matter. But true spirituality begins from the point of understanding that I have nothing to do with this world of matter, that I am actually a spark of pure consciousness, and my real home is the spiritual dimension.
Yeah, and religious, a religious person can be spiritual. Religion just means activities or rituals, and somebody can do them just like we are chanting. So chanting is a ritual. You can call it as a religious activity. But when chanting is done for, say, personal chanting mantras is done for whatever, personal motivation, then it becomes religious. Or once one doesn't really understand why one is doing it, then it becomes religious. Or out of superstition one does it, then it becomes religious. Same chanting can become spiritual if you are doing it for the right reason and with the right motivation and understanding. So it's not what the activity itself can be either, but it depends on our consciousness that makes it religious versus spiritual.
Yeah. Can you explain why there is no separation between matter and spirit? So
Go ahead.
That's just an easy
actually
question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question actually. It's a very good question because matter and spirit are actually both energy. And so, an example that Prabhupada uses is that electricity is electricity. Now it can be used for heating purposes or it can be used for cooling purposes. And an expert engineer can use that same electricity to run, both an air conditioner as well as a heater. So in the same way, from Krishna's perspective, there is no matter and spirit. They are both spirit. Now, when we engage that energy for our own gratification, then that becomes matter. But when that same energy is used in service to the Supreme Lord, then it becomes spirit. So it depends on my consciousness. My consciousness is what differentiates between matter and spirit. So if my consciousness is one of seeing this whole world as an emanation from the Supreme Spirit, and my intention is to reunite everything that I see around me back as an act and offering back to the Supreme Spirit, then everything is spiritual for me. Does that help?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Can we expect our motivation going to be primarily personal motivation while our practice begins to do its work on us?
Well, when we are following the directions of these great teachers, then we start out with the personal motivation may be there, but it's disregarded by Krishna. The personal motivation is not significant, and whatever is there, it will slowly get wiped out or purified.
Yeah. Yes, so I guess your point is right. The practice will actually work on us.
Yes.
Because in the beginning, nothing is pure. So we are like a piece of gold with some impurities in it. And as it goes through the fire of purification, then gradually all those impurities will go away. And one will come to see that one's greatest self-interest is in actually this unmotivated service. And then all those other motivations will just fall off on the wayside. So I don't know, we haven't heard from many of you, so just wanted to
8:43 we should end.
yeah, that's okay. How do I do this? How do I do this gallery view? Oh, there it is. Okay. So let's see. Shashi, any questions from you? No, Delia, it's wonderful. Your questions were so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Sindhu and Raghu, do you guys have any reflections or any thoughts?
We're completely enjoying ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see who else is there. Juma, any thoughts from you? Okay.
All right. So thank you all. I think it's already 8:45. So.
Juma is saying something.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just lost in every thing that you're explaining. So, yeah.
Did that resonate with you?
Yeah, very much. And you know that what I went through, so it's helping me. That the spirit and the matter and all those things are really helping me. So,
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, please watch it on YouTube. All of these videos are now available on our YouTube channel. So
If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. That way you'll have easy access
thank
to
you,
that.
Ashwin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you, Nikunja.